So here we are, starting this new format called The Shape of Europe, a podcast that wants to discuss how everyone, including you, can be part of the discussion about the future of Europe. Because there are people in Brussels discussing the shape of Europe and the future of Europe every day. And many European businesses, academic scientists, and people of culture and sports are not participating in this discussion enough. Or at least that's what we believe. And we are EPIC, a think tank, a new thinking movement that invites you to join the debate about the future of Europe. My name is Krzysztof Bulski, and my friend here is Antonios Nestoras, the founding director of EPIC. Antonios, but we are not alone here. Who is our guest?
Well, today we're recording in Warsaw, Poland, and our guest is one of the most brilliant European directors of our generation, a director who has been crossing borders and boundaries to make movies, not only within Europe, but also all over the world, including the US and Hollywood. We have the pleasure to discuss today with Jan Komasa. It's great. Thank you very much for your time. This is our first podcast. This is our first episode, and as Krzysztof said, we're trying to take the discussion about the future of Europe outside of the Brussels bubble, as we call it, because probably it seems obscure. Brussels for the outsider seems obscure, right? But it's also impenetrable. It's difficult for someone from the outside to come to Brussels and have some influence. So, in a way, our contribution with this podcast is also that, to allow different voices to be heard, different people from all walks of life. You're an artist yourself, but we will go also to athletes, we will go to culture icons, we will go to elected politicians, local authorities, local politicians, and actually enable them, allow them to contribute to the discussions about Europe. So that's the main goal, and I'm very happy and grateful to start with you.
I'm happy to be here. When I heard about your project, I got excited because I think that's what Europe needs now, which is a discussion, but it needs to open windows to everybody who is not only European, but definitely for Europeans. I think there's almost not only in European Union, but let's say 500 million people lives on the continent, and we share certain values. We're not aware of them. And I think if your project can bring us all together a bit more and show us who we are, or just a glimpse of it, that would be just perfect. So I heard about it, and I congratulate you. My fingers crossed for the project.
Thanks a lot. It's a tough job. We decided it's a crazy idea, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I looking at American culture. American culture knows how to promote itself, and it's not even a project that comes from up. It comes from grassroots. Things like podcasts, Joe Rogan, even Lex Friedman recently. So many different podcasts. They talk, they discuss, and we listen to them, but we don't have any ear on what's going on our continent. And if we are able to open a discussion, or at least, bring, as you said, people from different disciplines, that would be great for us to hear what they have to what they have to say, and what they think, and maybe that will inspire us all. So,
would you agree that European thought leaders representing culture, but also other disciplines and areas of life, have to learn how to promote themselves better? Just to give you an example, if you look at LinkedIn and the entire thought leadership there, I think that we mostly follow people from the US or UK, but I don't see many business leaders, coaches and so on and so forth, being followed by hundreds of thousands or millions of European users of LinkedIn. And I think this is just an example of how much we are influenced by those outside. So
in a way, Americans contribute more to the discussion about what is going on in Europe, what's the position of Europe in the world, than the actual Europeans, in a way. I'm simplifying, but...
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. But also, when there is someone who's influential, like let's say it's Slavoj Žižek, a European, and he's able to steer a debate, set a narrative to a certain degree. Also, the famous Greek, I know Antonius, you're from Greece, and your Minister of Finances,
the former Yanis Varoufakis.
Exactly. So he is a prominent figure, and I listened to many of his interviews because he was trying to prove something. He was like, you can disagree, but you can't say they don't have a certain vision. Greta Thunberg too, like people with strong voices and people who could be listened to. I think Europe struggles to bring them platforms. I think we are too closed in subgroups. I think we have to understand that, thinking about a platform for 500 million people rather than for 5 million people is much more efficient now, especially in the new era of I would say global tectonic shifts that is happening now. So you have to think in blocks. You have to think in unions like European Union, but not only. You can think of NATO, or like it doesn't have to be military. Obviously, it's just whatever makes it easier to spread the idea among a larger groups of people and to have your voice heard. So there are voices. I think we just have to learn to make them heard, and probably it stems also from different cultures and something that I think is the European superpower, which is the diversity and richness of our cultures and languages and customs and habits. And so I think we were able to overcome this. And with America, there's no, they speak American language, and English language. It's easier for them to promote their culture. We all watch their films, and I'm in the film industry, so in a way, I think there are great people. We have great people to listen to, great people to have discussions with. We just have to give them microphones.
You said something that I really like, that diversity, cultural diversity, is our superpower. It's also at the same time an obstacle, especially if you're trying to integrate 500 million people into a block. So I have the feeling that we have been trying very hard to integrate Europe on a very technocratic level. All kinds of regulations, all kinds of harmonizations between markets and between different legal frameworks and so on. But we haven't given it enough thought how we can integrate our public spheres. And this takes more than a private initiative like ours. It takes also some sort of a unifying vision. I would say, in risking to open the black box, it takes also some kind of a common identity behind it. So that's what I would like to discuss first and foremost with you, since you are in the cultural sector. Is there such thing as a European identity? Where can we find it? Where can we see it, locate it, touch it?
Yeah, I will start with something uncomfortable, maybe less. In terms of the discussion, it's easier for me to say because I was growing up in being in culture, and it's natural for me to talk about Plato, to talk about Balzac, Shakespeare, Cervantes, Dante, and Thomas Mann, because that was the soil I was kind of trying to harvest my own seeds and grow my own plants as a creator. So even that more so than, let's say, on thinking about Polish culture. Polish culture, sure, is rich, but you naturally, as a creator, you spread your interest to other countries. So I'm kind of a different species, and that's a danger in talking with people like me, because for me it's much more natural.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you how to kind of like thinking about people who are not necessarily in the creative business, and many people aren't. I would say majority. Although I would argue that we have all creative gene. And I was always advocating for activating this gene through education and inspiration. But I think if there is a shared European identity, I think it's born out of finally, we're in 2025 now. It's born out of slow progression of culture and cultural wars too, wars that led us nowhere, and it only showed us that battling for the culture, it doesn't erase a different culture. It just makes your own culture and the different culture a bit more visible and prominent. Only it empowers kind of people who are on the other aisle. And I think European learned to a certain degree. I want to believe that we learned our lesson of that it's just not worth it to on every level to wage wars and conflicts. And well, I come from a bit different angle, because as a creator, I'm looking for edges, for boundaries. I'm interested in pushing the boundaries. I have to find them. I have to find something that hurts you or hurts people, moves their imagination, and I explore this gray area between two different or three different, forces that push it. So that's my natural habitat. But for thinking about in broader terms in Europe, I think the beauty of, and I still believe in beauty of European Union, given all its disadvantages and vices, if there are vices, but I think the beauty of European Union at its core, it's noble that we, even if Britain left, it's still. It can't leave the continent, and it's surrounded by European Union. Like however you try to do it, like you're part of this discussion. Whatever you try to do, you can impose tariffs and barriers. You can build walls and whatever. You're part of this culture. Whatever you're trying to do, you're connected with. We're too interconnected. So I think slowly and surely, I feel like there's this European identity. In the process of solidifying, and it's not, it doesn't come from up. It comes from the where we are. It's just I see this everywhere around. Like I see people traveling and being more interested in affairs in like. In Poland, in Portugal, Spain, UK. Let's say UK is part of too. So I feel it's a natural process. I think it's a natural process.
I agree with you.
I think it's natural for us to come together, sort of. Like we can't avoid it. There are people who try to build barriers. But it's futile. I think it doesn't lead us anywhere. I think it's just for political games.
But what we have to also understand is that right now Europe is home to generations like ours, the generation of our parents and grandparents, and we are those who remember a Europe of countries with borders, where you needed to have a passport to actually travel to your neighboring country. Whereas the younger generations are growing up with no memory of that. They are free to travel. I think this is something that, well, we can imagine a Europe with borders. For them, it's much harder. And that also makes it maybe, hopefully, impossible to reverse for any political forces that would try to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. But even with that, I'm thinking a lot about the European with borders and about our, a memory of it pre-entering European Union. And even with that, people were traveling, and people were still. They couldn't, you just can't hold people like in a camp or something. Like even with borders, they're doing Cold War too. But even before that, like I'm thinking about the tragic period of when, for us, for Poles, when Poland was not one country, it was divided by three different forces. And thinking about artists like Frédéric Chopin, like he traveled constantly to France. He was in Spain, in France. He was just traveling because you just can't you can't prevent it. So that gives me hope that you can impose barriers, but people's nature. Especially with technology and the means of transportation today, and we're more interconnected than ever. Internet, media, it's already here. It's an ocean, and it's a pool.
You're opening up the chapter of the fundamental function that traveling plays in creating a sense of common culture, common identity, or a sense of belonging together, because you really have to travel to see that. At least that's my personal experience. You have to travel to see that we're not that much different, and then you have to travel outside of Europe to see, oh, actually we are very much alike compared to the Americans, or compared to the Asians, or compared to anybody else. So traveling, indeed, what you said is like a natural process of building up from the bottom up, this sense of belonging and of belonging together. And then this spills over into culture, into creating films with one another, or creating cross-border cooperations of all kinds, studying abroad. So this is very fundamental to understand that we can have the technical integration, like we don't have borders anymore, but we also have to facilitate travel on top of that in order for this to be working. Because as you said, it's the traveling, it's not the fact that we don't have a border, but the traveling that creates this situation, this self-awareness in people. So and I'm really sad, if not angry, when I hear the people saying that we have to stop traveling. For example, I'm like, guys, this is a fundamental aspect of European integration. If we, because we're traveling too much for tourism, for example. No, actually, this is exactly what we should be doing, especially in Europe, with all the experiences that we have from the conflicts that you mentioned. We have to travel, we have to meet other people, we have to meet each other.
Especially that soon we will all be jobless because the robots will be doing the work for us. So travel will be the most interesting thing to do, right? At least I hope so.
Yeah, on robots' backs.
Again, yes, someone will have to transport us.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Well, also there's this sense of you can sit on your chair and you don't have to do anything. If you want to close in your own bubble, so be it. The rest of the world will not wait for you. We can pretend Europe is different, but it's in the global interconnected aspect where Asia will never stop. America either. South America, I don't know. But these are two, like, there are the world is interconnected, as we said, but also there are tectonic plates in this world, and Europe has to be aware. And in this aspect, we shouldn't stop. We shouldn't go back. We should think about all the means possible to bring us all together and create the stronger voices that are heard. And we have to because shared identity is also power.
What you say fills me with optimism, because it means that there is a geopolitical necessity for working together and living together.
But it also fills me with doubt if we know how to do it.
It's a natural process.
Yeah, we have to. Let's start with putting the table between us, mics, and just talk about it.
But if you say power, that reminds me of a conversation we had a while ago discussing culture as a tool for diplomacy. Do you think that this is something that could be done on behalf of Europe, not specific nations? Like Poland has Chopin, and will always use the classic of Polish diplomatic events outside of Poland, the young promising pianist playing Chopin. But what about European culture? What is European culture in terms of, or European film? That, let's say, we had someone from the European Commission at the table. What advice would you give them?
Well, you're bringing a very interesting aspect of culture as power. I think investments in culture always pay back. The problem with this is it's really hard to show it on the spreadsheet of Excel. It's not a product you can measure that easily. You can measure it to a certain degree. It's just a radiation of the potential of certain. I think identity behaves like a star. The brighter it glows, the more heat you feel.
That's good.
I think that's the identity. We have to all we went a long way from tribes to entities like Roman Empire, or even before or simultaneously to that Greek police, to through world wars to a European identity. It's a long way, and it's we're in the process of doing this, because I think, I'm not sure where it leads. I hope the global identity, when we meet aliens, we would have to redefine who we are.
Of course, the director is already creating
that's
scenario.
Elon Musk should be sitting by our side. But I think it's a geopolitical necessity, and I think culturally we have to understand that culture is. I hate to use the word, but let's say it's a weapon. It's a weapon. It's a weapon of.
It's a Trojan horse, isn't it?
It's a Trojan horse. Yes, it is, but also it kind of disarms you. Like when someone has a strong identity, there's this. When I think about Ukraine and wars, I think about how fragile I'm not talking about their identity. I'm talking about what people think about Ukraine, if they think about it at all. They have, I think, people are confused about Ukraine. I'm talking about people, let's say, in California or in New York if they don't know anything about Ukraine, let alone knowing where Kiev actually is, to them, Europe is the Eiffel Tower, Paris, Rome, and maybe a couple of other cities.
An open museum.
Exactly, and free healthcare, right? So I think we have to think in perspective about people who know nothing about you, and this is dangerous. I think when you're unknown, it makes you fragile. It makes you for the taking. It means that maybe a stronger one can come and take you, and nobody will say a word.
I mean, that's what we see also with Europe's position in the world. We've been hearing for a lot of years now, don't remember how many exactly, about the global role of Europe, and that we have to have a geopolitical role. We have to be able to shape international politics and so on and so forth.
You mean what we heard from politicians?
Yes, that's what we've been hearing for some time. But it seems like we are unable to do that because we don't even know our position. It's like we don't have a very strong identity to say, but it's us. We are Europeans.
Yeah.
Of course, we will be in the middle of that, let's say, in the middle of the US and China. And we will be this peacekeeping force, but we need enough power to be able to be a peacekeeping force. And we will try to balance the scales and so on. And for the time being, it seems like these two big blocks are just creating their strategies. They have their plans. They take decisions. As we've seen, they don't take always into consideration what Europe has to say. Everyone was shocked when President Trump came out and said, if we want Greenland, basically if we want Greenland, we will take it.
Honestly, I think it helps us even more, because
to
when he
realize,
when he spinned the idea of taking Greenland, as it activated in me, who was never in there, but I felt someone is taking this from me, even though I've never been there, right? But it was European. In my mind, it was always Danish. Then I started to read about it. Then I read about the autonomy of this region. Yes, but someone saying this activated in like a sense of belonging, this land belonging to my sphere of comfort, of life, or of culture. And then I felt, this is amazing, but because sometimes you need to feel the danger in order to understand who you are. And that's what happened. So many people say it happened with Ukraine too. There's this, Ukraine is a good example of solidifying identity. Ukrainian identity, as any identity actually in the world, every country started with migration. Every country, right? We all come from somewhere. We were never born just there, and we were just, so we're not like plants. We always, even plants come from travel, all right? So Ukrainian identity was probably next to be solidified. Ukrainian historians will say their national identity started or was boosted by Polish presence in Ukraine for centuries, right? They didn't feel they're part of Poland, but so they had to redefine who they are if they are not Poles. So I think every motion brings emotion. I think Trump's motion brought emotion in me, and this is what makes, I think this is what Europe is. We have such strong motions around the world that we're like, I dream about Europe in which Europe in which a person in, let's say, Portugal, or I'm not talking about an artist or film director. I'm talking about everybody, anybody actually, will feel saddened hearing about the train crash in Lithuania, and will feel. I dream about a Europe where people from Scandinavia will feel responsibility for something happening in Sardinia or in Italy, or it's happening. I feel like it's the responsibility. Trump addressed Greenland, and I felt a responsibility. Something he evoked an emotion in me, and it was interesting because probably 100 years ago I wouldn't care.
So basically, when you have the external threat, right? As you mentioned, the aliens possibly will make us feel more like humans.
Yeah.
The Americans and the Russians and the Turks are making us feel more European because they are demanding something, or they are more aggressive or revisionist, as we call them in the literature, and so on. So again, that's a natural process.
That's a natural process, and that's like you call it and you see what happens. And he called it and see what happened. Like Europeans were confused. I was looking for any strong statements from European politicians, and really there was such a confusion because people felt, I could feel the anger and confusion and the sense of unfairness. Honestly, it's nothing happened. It's just, it happened in the sphere of words and narratives and ideas. Mm-hmm. Someone spinned the idea of taking the European land, even for the sake of political, let's say, circus. It's outrageous to many people. They didn't know how to address this weird feeling because it's just Greenland. Who was in Greenland? Who traveled there?
But it's ironic. It's ironic that, according to the literature and the history showed us that the Americans was a major force behind the initial European integration. They actively pushed us towards creating a single market in order to reconstruct the continent after the Second World War. And the irony of history is that they're still some sort of force in pushing us to integrate more together, but from a different perspective, a different point of view.
Yeah,
Krzysztof, you want to say?
Janek, you say that culture, in your case, film, can be a tool in building this soft power of Europe, both internally to make this feeling of belonging, but also externally. But I still don't understand how to do it. Obviously, the United States can be an example because they have, wherever you go in the world, there's American cultural influence felt. Anyone else on the global stage who does it well, who we could look at just for inspiration, how to actually make it work, how to make use of this soft power that we definitely have? Yeah. Because what else is the history and the cultural base that Europe gave to the world is one of the strongest powers we have already.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's many examples of that. But the most shining probably case study is South Korea. And I use it as a great example, especially in film. South Korean dictator right after the war, Second World War, in order to differentiate culturally from the North Korea, decided to allocate money and funds from partially from military to culture. He said we have to use. I'm not quoting directly, but in terms of the strategy, the idea was to treat culture as we said, a weapon to a certain degree, a weapon in creating a strong, very different from the North, South Korean identity, right? Mm-hmm. And it was imposed. It was maybe absurd and abstract thing when you think about culture, and you think about like treating culture as like in a factory. Like you tell people you have to, in 5 years you have to create 100 films. I don't care what types of films, hundreds of them. So, but it was imposed, and it was imposed artificially on people. You had to, as a producer, you had to get a license, and the license it was mandatory for you to create 10 films, and then the number was a little lower.
But in total or within a time frame?
10 films in a time frame of 12 months. And
That's insane.
That was insane, yes. And people at first, and if you don't have the license, you can't create films in that country too. So, producers wanted to have this license. Once they got it, then they realize it's not
just to give people an understanding what that means. How long have you been in the film business, and how many films have you created?
So look, we live in a time where you can create films through you can produce, you can communicate with people through Zoom calls and stuff, right, internet. So it's much easier. We have to think about the times when you shoot films on film, real film tape, and there was and phone calls. Probably phone call. You think about phone calls. Phones actually, the device itself.
Landlines,
in 46, 47, 48, 50, like 1950. Like how many phones were there? I even remember from Poland there was. Not everybody had a TV set in 80s or TV set. Sure, almost everyone I knew, but VHS video recorder or whatever. Some of my friends had it, so you went to them to watch films. Go back in time to the beginning of 50s to South Korea, that was ravaged by war with the North too. And then think about what they tried to do. The task was enormous. And they still did it. And it wasn't working ideally, but they managed to create a lot of films. There are some absurd. You can, by the way, you can look it up on IMDb, Internet Movie Database, or Google or whatever. You will find directors that directed 90 films, 90, which is impossible
in their lifetime.
Today, if you make one movie a year, you are a runner. Like you run, like people. If they see you making one movie a year, it's just like. It's mind-blowing, because then it means when you're making a film, we're directing it, at the same time you have to be involved already in 2 other projects, because the next project I'm for whatever reason, let's not get into this, but I tend to work on many projects at the same time, so I'm kind of known. To the frustration of different producers I work with, I'm known for being involved in many different areas and many different projects. I also teach. I also produce films. So that's another thing. But so creating one film a year for a director is a thing. Usually, you work on a film for 2 years, 3 years, something like that. So the time spent depends on your own. Energy and potential. But in South Korea in 1950s, it was artificially imposed on people to work on their projects, on producers. They're mandatory. They had to deliver 10 films a year, then less and less. But ultimately, they ended up in very quickly boosting up the cultural kind of, in terms of films, I'm sure it went to other, it radiated to other disciplines of who they are today. But they created a school of Korean cinema, and you can watch like those films. I'm not a film historian. I watched many films from Korea, but definitely their films became a thing in 90s, and especially when they broke through the the identity. I mean, the identity. They broke through the bubble, like the European bubble, and I started to be aware of Asian cinema, Korean cinema in the 90s. And then Tarantino brought Bong Joon, great Korean director, to like awareness. He made Hollywood aware of Bong, and I had the honor of being in the same room during the Oscars 5 years ago, in 2020. Just before the pandemic, in one room with Tarantino, with Scorsese, and with Bong, and that was, I would say, the long road South Korea had it coming, to be in one room on the global stage on one of the most celebrated events in my business. And it started in 1950s.
So basically the argument is that by investing, even in this awkward or heavy-handed way, on cultural products, on cinema, they managed to differentiate themselves from the North, but also to create an image of themselves for the rest of the world that eventually brought them recognition and appreciation globally, and creating a tradition. But we have here, and I agree with the argument, and it makes sense. But here in Europe, we have like a lot of different traditions as well. We have Italian cinema, we have French cinema, Polish cinema, and so on. All different, smaller, maybe more limited versions of what we call European cinema, but still quite different with each other. So I would like to go continue down the film discussion and ask about, but to go back to Europe and say, what is Europe in cinema, in global cinema today?
That's a good question, because it's having so many films created every year in Europe. I always tend to ask myself this question about, let's say, let's say storytelling itself, or a main character or a hero, like creating a hero in your film. Means of I treat films also as 2-hour journeys, like 2-hour slot of a journey. I'm talking about films. We can talk about TV series too, but let's say films are the format of 2 hours, 100 minutes, whatever. And everybody has their own recipe for the journey. Everybody have, like, every continent, every country, and there's this stereotype of American hero. There's this. So I would say, with regards to that, European hero was built on the coalescence of, and the richness, the cultural richness of our cultures and our identities and our dark pasts too, histories, which kind of made us much more, when you think about European films, they tend to be much more ambiguous and open to, let's say, not having a happy ending at the end. And that's fine in Europe.
So they're open to interpretation.
They are open to
they
interpretation.
Have
Usually you end up, like, I always laugh with my students, because I teach at film school in Łódź, and we always talk about the endings of films. The ending is pretty crucial, because you can make a beautiful film, but if you don't deliver a good ending or a proper ending to this film, the ending might weigh on the whole perception of the film, right? So when you leave the room, you have the ending in your head, or not. So the endings in European cinema are very ambiguous. We like it. We like ending with a question mark, not with a dot, not with a period. or with 3 dots, ... or with we don't like to end with
A full stop.
with exclamation marks, like big, pathos ending. We like ambiguity. We're okay with the main character finally going home, getting to the house, knocking on the door, and then end credits. You will never know what's behind the door. That's fine with Europeans.
Maybe that's one way of being able to live with each other, being open to different interpretations. Maybe it's a natural instinct to have this also integrated into our cultural products.
I was on this. I was talking. Sorry to interrupt. I was talking with one of the producers lately, and he was involved in many big films, Marvel films, and he said something like, "When we make a film, our bosses in our main, like CEOs of our company, they always say, why waste anybody's 2.5 or 3 hours of their lives to not give them hope at the end of the movie?" And this is a very different approach from our approach. Our approach is to sometimes just take to just steer a debate, to create ferment. And in US, there's a strong sense, not everywhere, obviously, not everywhere, but there's the strong sense of once you start making a film, it should give us a sense of it should make, it should bring you the sense of the world that makes sense at the end to a certain degree. Because what's the point? Why steer doubt? Why make people feel worse about themselves than when they sat down to watch your movie just before that? So that's a very different approach. This is kind of like, I would say, utilitarian approach of just giving you something that might help you feel better, but there's a philosophy behind it. It's not a popcorn. You can call it popcorn philosophy or whatever. But at the end of your film, you should make people, I don't know, feel more hopeful, smile, feel relieved, and that's okay. That's like it's life is hard itself. Why bring more misery to it by giving people more doubt? Or I'm not saying doubt, but I'm saying making them feel miserable. So we can pose a question in American film. I think America is much more open to questions now than they used to be, like, let's say 20 years ago. That's why Americans are much more, I think, and that's great. Many American producers are able now to talk with their bosses and to bring people like me to the table and say, let's have this American film done by this guy from Central Europe. Let's see what happens.
So we're influencing American culture now.
I'm sure it happens.
You on our behalf.
It's happening. Like Christopher Nolan, British, he changed the perception of Batman. I think that was a shift in philosophy. I think Batman is a special example of a hero who is constantly in severe depression, which is kind of very European. So Christopher Nolan did it beautifully, but he gave Americans, this American film, American production, an underpinning of a philosophy, and bringing great villains to the table, like the Joker with Heath Ledger. He created the sense of Nietzschean. You can like, it was philosophical, nihilism, Bane, another villain. So he did it, but also people from outside of, not necessarily from Europe, also from Mexico. There's this Mexican wave, like Alfonso Cuarón, too. Many European directors, I think, are, our voices are now more sexy to a certain degree. We can bring, I think, invigorating new perspectives to American storytelling, because they are still evolving and progressing and looking for, that's the American entrepreneurship that I crave for, and I'm jealous of. I love it. And this is something we can steal from them, giving them our ideas and bringing us all together at the end.
It's funny, while you were making this comparison between European American cinema, and you said that European cinema doesn't end with a full stop or an exclamation mark. It usually goes with 3 points, and it's an open ending. It's a work in progress in a way. It continues afterwards. It continues inside your head. So just wanted to point out that at that moment I thought, well, the irony is that the European project is also similar in a way. There is no full stop. It's a work in progress. It's and we don't have a very clear idea about the ending. As well. It's very European in this way. Yeah?
Because it was, so far it wasn't meant to go that far. We actually went further, where the idea of Europe was, as a community called European Union, was first meant to focus on economy and trade. And then somehow we started taking it for granted that it's going to be much more. Now, it's a great question that I hear in what you're saying. Now, if we don't know the ending, maybe it's the cultural industry and the filmmakers of Europe who can help us, because definitely it's not the politicians, who can help us answer that question.
I hope, I hope that the culture. There was, by the way, to give you a sense of where me as a person representing or creating culture, trying to create culture is. I was met with some people who told me, I don't watch films. What's the point? I don't think culture is necessary. What's the point? I met people like this. I think they, I think I'm not kind of trying to advocate for my paycheck, because I could do many different things. I feel a sense of mission in me being in culture. I think supporting culture, thinking about culture as part of your own DNA is crucial to make your business more powerful. If the culture is powerful, your business is much more powerful. Let's say Britain. Britain is a great example. They by DNA, many of my British friends would oppose this by nature. But I see it as a foreigner. I come there, I work with them, and I see how strong a British identity is in terms of business. Let's say British iconic education. Iconic British education. You have British universities. They made their name through centuries, sure. But what about Greek academia? Like, it was one of the absolutely first place you could actually meet people, but it's Cambridge, it's Oxford, it's the University of Edinburgh, and many other universities, St. Martin's in arts, etc., etc. They made the name. They knew they have to protect their identity and the brand. They created a strong brand of British universities and British academic life. And what about culture in this regard? Culture only brought it further. Harry Potter. Harry Potter is the epitome. It's absolutely it's an anthem of British universities. Everything takes place in Harry Potter at school. School is the very center, and what they teach magic. Isn't it the best
like an allegory
example of how they think J.K. Rowling was able to kind of catch something very British and make this young lad look like small John Lennon too, and and just distribute it all over the world and infuse the whole generation all around the globe with this strong sense of Britishness, and it happened. And business-wise, I'm sure the profit was amazing. I'm not only talking about the Harry Potter tours at the Warner Studios close to London. I'm talking about the sense of when you think about setting your business somewhere, you think about London. You think why do you think about things like that? Like, why do you think about the city still? Because there's something in you that tells you it's worth it. It's worth it. This internal judge that comes to that is there before you even make a judgment with whom you'd like to collaborate in selling, with your startups, in doing AI, in progressing, in selling your brand, where you think about places that and you think about places that kind of invigorate you. The Inception, Christopher Nolan film, is about it, like putting a seed in you you're not aware of, and somehow it steers your life. You think you make decisions, actually your preconditioning makes the decision first, and then you just kind of bounce off of it.
So we're talking about mass hypnosis.
Mass hypnosis. Exactly. So culture in a way is a mass hypnosis to a certain degree. And politicians know the power of hypnosis, of the manipulation of narratives. Narratives can bring people to the conclusion that they have to sacrifice their lives on the front line for your narrative. And then 20 million people dies in the World War because of the book, right? The book.
So to make this work, but in the positive sense, to build the European competitiveness, to make Europe stronger and united, and to also make sure that people are attached to the idea of Europe. The film industry on its own will never be able to do it. One of the goals of this podcast is to also understand how to involve people from outside the political circles of Brussels into the policy debate. What do you think is missing as a link? Like, do you discuss Brussels policies affecting your industry with your colleagues in the industry? I guess not too much. So
not too much. Probably only when it comes to the bottle caps or something like politics of the bottle.
I'm talking about specific regulations that influence your industry, and there are plenty of issues. Like, for example, copyrights and the rights to receive payment in film, but also in the music industry.
Royalties.
Royalties, exactly. So it is all being discussed and shaped in Brussels. And do you feel that you are part of that discussion? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, it's just, your reach as a person sitting in Berlin and Warsaw, you tend to fall into the trap of thinking that your reach is limited to your own kind of bubble, and it's not, obviously. And we're more than ever. To be honest, there is a progress in this regard. 20 years ago, if you asked me this, of course not. It's just we were too new to the European Union. But when I was traveling with my films 20 years ago too, because it started in 2005 with Ode to Joy, with my first film. Even before that, I was in Cannes, which was a huge thing. But I could see it, that this market of ideas, because it's still a market of ideas. Film festivals are great, and great inventions, especially in Europe. I think your own sense of influence over what's being discussed in the European Parliament only grows. It's bigger than ever, partially thanks to social media, even far-right politicians who advocate for a stronger nationalization and national identity, for empowering the national identities. They have to take it to the European Parliament, go on stage, and give the speech, and be there, and make sure their speech reaches audiences from European Parliament. So suddenly, 10 years ago, I wouldn't say I was watching anybody at European Parliament giving any speech on my cell phone. Now it's normal. I watch it almost every day. So something is happening. Something like this. The European Parliament is broadcasting its debates, its discussions, its speeches, etc. We receive it. We're on the receiving end of it. We get it. We discuss it among ourselves. So I think the direction is right. I think we have to just think about the ways to channel it better now, since there is this connection, and definitely empower people to think about European Union as their own place. That's the thing. Like you have to understand that that the sidewalk in Lisbon should interest you just as much. The sidewalk in front of your house interests you. Like the responsibility for Europe as a whole should spread. Like people, when I was shooting a film in Dublin, in Ireland, Ireland after Brexit is the only English-speaking country that's part of European Union. So that's why they see the influx of many businesses who still want to keep it English language, but within European Union. So Ireland is a huge beneficiary of Brexit. Great. I was shooting a film in Ireland. I'm from Central Europe, and I still felt I'm contributing to my own country too, because it will somehow benefit from me spending money in Dublin through European Union mechanisms and the mechanisms of production, and I was proud of it. I'm proud of it. I realized the model of shooting a film within the boundaries of European Union and benefits everybody within European Union. It's a shared, it's a shared treasure, financial too. And the more people, the more Polish farmer who certain groups are easy to manipulate. The more Polish farmers, miners, whoever, groups understand their interest is in Brussels as well as the nearest city, the better for all of us, for them, and for the farmers in Portugal. Polish farmers have to, and I think because they're like Polexit. Guys, you contribute your soil somewhere close to Krakow or wherever is benefits from being in the European Union. The connection is so clear. Don't get manipulated by it. Just use it to your own advantage. Treat Brussels as your own home, or as your own county office.
There's a growing realization I can see it. I can see it on the street. I can see it with the people I speak to in all European member states, that we cannot do without Brussels. The first important thing is that every single law passes through Brussels, or the great majority of the laws are voted in Brussels. And the disconnect that we see can also be time delay. It's a lag. Mm-hmm. And people are slowly realizing what is happening, and that they need to put their weight behind the decision making in Brussels. They need to hold Brussels accountable, not so much to destroy the European project, but to hold it accountable, and to if it's something that can be voted on the European level, it's fine, but we also need to keep our local and regional governance and national governance in place, and we have to find a combination. So this is also what we want to do with EPIC, to facilitate this realization, what we called a geopolitical necessity before. There is a realization. It is there. It is happening. We need to facilitate that, to explain to the people that we cannot deal with the challenges that we have in front of us by ourselves. We cannot compete with the United States or with China or even with Russia. I'm sorry, but this is a sad realization that we cannot support Ukraine against the Russian invasion by ourselves. And we have constantly living in fear. What happens if the Americans decide to pull out of Ukraine and stop supporting anymore? So that's something that is out there. It's growing, it's emerging, but we need to facilitate. And this is exactly why we created EPIC as well. I have a funny story about the way we created EPIC. When the team came together, we wanted to create a think tank, like, the very boring stuff, publications, policy papers, events, conferences, and so on. The other half of the team wanted to create a political movement, like change the world, change Europe, change the world. So I said, as a good European, let's create a
something
compromise.
In the middle.
It's something in the middle. Let's create a compromise. We're Europeans here. That's also part of our identity. So EPIC is not a think tank. It's not a political movement. It's a thinking movement. So I believe that it captures what we need. We need to move, for sure. We need to change. We need to reach somewhere. But we have to do that in a thoughtful way in order to carve out our position, our own turf.
Because this also influences both how we will work in EPIC as a movement, but how we will work as a think tank. Because as a movement, we will think more strategically. This is the problem of politics everywhere. What's the next big thing tomorrow? Not looking ahead for the future generations, the next 10, 20 years. But as a think tank, EPIC is not elitist. There are dozens of think tanks in Brussels that are very influential within the Brussels bubble. But outside of Brussels bubble, nobody has ever heard of them and their conclusions. And I believe that's a big problem of this lack of channeling. And I'm not only talking about the average citizen. I'm also talking about people working, leaders of industries they discuss. So I think this is something that we on our to our small extent will try to do. But this is also a much needed shift in the mindset on a broader scale.
That's our goals and our plans. How about you?
Too. I only second that. I think that's the best way to empower ourselves But it's not only about empowerment. I think in terms of philosophy, it would be just beautiful if people's, desires, their own philosophies were as active as they can be. Active, by active meaning, I mean going out of your comfort zone, meeting the other, being more open, breaking through your own boundaries, creating something new. Even if you're afraid of failing, even if this project will fail or whatever, it will definitely never, its results will never be diminished or erased. Something will grow out of it anyway. So I think we're in the cycle of bringing something, growing it, and it dies off, but it something else is born out of it. I think if European Union is a noble at its core, is a noble dream of bringing so many different nations, cultures together for the benefit of for peace, first and foremost, because that was the goal, to just prevent wars in future after what happened in 20th century and earlier. And then if we're able to create this mindset of people wanting to, not fearing progress. I don't mean progress for the sake of just progress. I'm thinking progress for the sake of humanity, for the sake of, I'm not trying to sound idealistic, I'm trying to sound realistic. Like the humanity will never stop. Europe can't be left behind. And in order to do it, we have to just stand up, not sit in our small communities, to contribute to those small communities, never forget about them, but also think about broader terms. And I think Brussels was designated as somewhere some time ago as a place to meet, a platform to gather and to spend some time together there and to share ideas, brainstorm them, and go out of your comfort zone. Even if it's sloppy, even if it's not ideal, it makes the world just more interesting and it pushes the envelope further. So I think it's worth it.
But how to explain this vision, which I think we all here at this wooden table agree on, how to explain it to Europeans who feel that when they embrace the European identity, they will have to give up their local, their national, but also their local Heimat identity.
Yeah, local Heimat.
That is simply not true. National identities are totally compatible with European identity. By the way,
you know that, but not everyone agrees with that, and there are also political movements that argue against it. So I was curious just to hear from Janek if there is a way, even in this from the perspective of a film director who knows how to tell stories, of actually telling those people that there's nothing to fear, and those things are actually part of something that works really well together already.
I might contradict myself to a certain degree, but the awful truth about boundaries is they are all fake, and they are just the result of a deal between us. Like we can set a boundary on the mountains of Pyrenees between France and Spain. We can do it, but we can push it. We can disintegrate it. We can do whatever we want with this. It's just a deal between us. So philosophically, and sorry to be so maybe, but philosophically we are all. We have to understand we're just on the same ship, on the same boat, and we can't paddle in different directions. We have to understand that it doesn't. It's like we're all relevant to ourselves. Even if we like to think about our own local Heimats, the reality check is that your own language doesn't doesn't prevent influences from the outside. No matter how hard you will try, you will never be free from outside influence. It's just it. It's just how it is, how things are. People tried. Even North Korea, it just closed itself, tried. But North Korean dictator realized that South Koreans, coming back to my example, that South Koreans are making films after films and building their own identity, and North Korea doesn't have this program. What happened was, and it's a true story, that the North Koreans kidnapped a film director from South Korea
No.
with his actress. And when he woke up in Pyongyang, they told him we will set you free if you
Like 10 movies per year.
Movies for us too.
That's a true story.
That's a true story.
Wow.
And I believe one of the producers I know is working on a film about it. So it's an amazing story that shows you that finally North Korea also realized they have to, and they did it in their own way, just kidnapping something that works as somewhere else. But you can't. You can try live in a camp in a bubble behind a wall, but it's just impossible. There's no boundaries. Walls are artificial. They're up. They're down. You can build them. You can destroy them. Nature doesn't care about our walls. So at the end of the line,
we might not be. We might not know the ending, but we're definitely in the ending together.
Exactly.
That's
a beautiful conclusion. At the end, no matter what you do, we're on this ship together. And if this ship is called European Union, or some people will say, "Oh, this ship is called my own street," and I don't care about anything else. It's not. If this ship is called your country, it's not it. It's not the ship. If this ship is called European Union, great. And we all advocate it because at least it's a bigger ship than just your own street. But at the end of the line, we all live on this piece of rock that surfs through space, from unknown direction to unknown direction, and we just have to create a sense for ourselves
and enjoy the ride.
But
exactly. Listen, when you talk about Europe and also the fact that it's gonna be a community, whether someone likes it or not, this is also an important thing to mention, because not only a lot of people, but also a lot of businesses and science representatives don't feel the need, or don't feel they have enough power to partake in this discussion that is shaping Europe in Brussels. If you look at business lobbies registered in Brussels, there is something called the European Transparency Register, where you can check who represents what company and industry. You see a very big difference between how many organizations and companies are registered with an office in Brussels from the, let's say, old Europe, so countries like France, Germany, and the new Europe. Like Poland here, we have the example that in this transparency register, you have over 250 companies having a lobbying office in Brussels from Germany, and below 20 from Poland. And I think what also needs to be taught to people and advocated and sort of advertised even, that Brussels is not a place where we have to come and ask for something as Europeans. Brussels is a place it's actually our place. Everyone from every corner of Europe should feel entitled to arrive in Brussels and share their views, share their opinions.
And shape it. Right, exactly. And it's not like if you don't shape it, it will just wait for you. Somebody else will come and shape it for you. So either you do it or others will do it for you. So it's just like, it's not only it will be active no matter what you do. That's what we're trying to say to people who don't believe in the European Union. If you don't believe in the European Union, so be it. Just, other will come and have different ideas, and it will happen anyway. Like we can, it's a, you can try and divert the flow, but you're just slowing it down for a little. But it's just, so it's better to just be part of it and understand the relevance of your own input, and then just shape it. And then you will be better off. Everybody will be, your community will be better off, and your Heimat will shine.
There's also a time delay because you mentioned old and new Europe. The repercussions, the consequences of the latest series of EU enlargement is not yet fully developed. We're still waiting to see the dynamics, the emerging dynamics of all the 10 new countries joining the EU. It's in terms of, budget allocation, it's already there. But in terms of political influence, which is something that takes much more time to evolve, develop, we haven't seen it yet. So in a way, the full potential of Poland.
But how long do we have to wait from your perspective?
Again, it's a process. Mm-hmm. It's a process, but it takes a realization, and we are at that point now, after a series of events that. People in Poland, even more so, I would say, than the rest of the new entries, will have to realize that we also need their presence and their influence and their contribution in Brussels. I mean, that's what we're talking about with EPIC, and that's what we discussed in the past as well. So. It's not yet fully developed the way I see it. It's still emerging, and we can facilitate it. But there are different dynamics also between old member states, new member states, north, south. It's a complicated. I mean, from a political science, I'm trained as a political scientist. The European Union is absolutely fascinating if you see it from a detached point of view. Mm-hmm. It's just a political organization that keeps evolving and evolving and evolving. It might happen after the war, and I cannot even imagine the sheer the psychology of those people who saw the continent completely devastated, and they said, "Okay, enough is enough. We can no longer do this. We have to work together." We're not in the same situation right now. We're in a different phase. Now we're looking outwards, no longer looking to reconstruct the continent. But it takes a lot of time, and there are different dynamics, cultural dynamics, different historical trajectories. Each country has their own histories and so on. It's fascinating.
We are in a different moment, but I think you will both agree that we are in the moment where everyone is sort of fearing this uncertainty of some big shift that's going to happen, already happening, but we don't know exactly what it means. And there is fear. Where can it lead us? What can we think of this? The changes in the US, AI taking over, probably part of our functioning. Also, political changes in Europe. Is it possible to actually? I mean, I'm sure Janek could draw us some scenarios of those three dots. But
now you're asking about the endings, and we said
asking about the endings.
we are awkward with the endings.
Well, I mean, but if you are looking at the business side of making films, at some point, every director has to sit down and start working on the sequel. So, what is the?
That's another way to put it. Yeah, we have to think about the sequel of the European Union.
Yeah, Yeah.
A different phase, I would put it, but
different
still.
phase. And as you said, it doesn't quite end. It's not like there's a certain ending where everything stops and like we've reached the end game, like end point. It doesn't work. But definitely, European Union, as you said, is, I think, also like I'm super lucky to be living in these times. I could be living in 16th century, ravaged by Swedes, from something called doing something called Swedish deluge in Poland, or 30-year war or something, or Black Plague or something. We're living now in Europe. We went through the pandemic. We were helping Ukraine with the war. I remember, like, even, having Ukraine and Polish context. In 1939, nobody helped us. Like, we were between two different nations. Nobody brought us any new, like, nobody gave us weapons and stuff. We were cut off. Geopolitically, it was tough because geography speaks volumes. But honestly, we were kind of alone. Ukraine is not alone. The whole world, our taxes, the money from it, went from different countries differently, was flowing and is flowing to
But
help
most
Ukraine.
of Europe helped.
Yeah. So we're in a different world, and I think Kremlin probably learns the hard lessons now about where we are. I mean, I hope they see that the world really changed, and it's not like you can just grab the land or, but we're just too interconnected, and obviously even like the wealthy and mighty in this world, like Elon Musk's, Jeff Bezos's, and others, they see that they work for interconnection, creating Starlinks, Amazon, to make us even more interconnected. So their businesses thrive on interconnectivity. An interconnected world is just harder to partition, to invade it. It's harder to invade something that's interconnected with others. And Ukraine is a great example of this. Even a country compared to Poland, let's say, I would say less recognizable identity worldwide. So even that brings me hope that, it's not just so easy to be a bully in the classroom anymore.
So we know that we cannot foresee a scenario, but we can maybe understand what will define that scenario. Because if you look at the world right now, we have the war in Ukraine, we have the pandemic, which I think has influenced Europe in many different ways, and we would surely need a different podcast episode to debate it. Maybe one of those defining aspects is Elon Musk and his influence on politics, or Donald Trump. What do you think will define how this future of Europe, this Europe next chapter, will evolve?
Should I take it?
Please.
It's a combination of external and internal shocks, I believe. We usually say that Europe crises are the engine of European integration. We usually wait for something to push us. Integration is not a proactive process. There's something bad happening somewhere, and that is making us feel uncertain and afraid. And then we say, okay, now how are we going to deal with this? And we mentioned a few of those shocks, like Trump overrunning Greenland, for example. That was a shock therapy for Europeans, I would like to believe. Russian invasion of Ukraine and the realization that we cannot do it, we cannot support Ukraine by ourselves. There have been others in the past, the previous Trump administration. Even Brexit has brought us together. So there's a good side in all those crises, and of course we have also internal crises, financial crisis, the debt crisis. That's something. That was the realization. Greece was on the verge of bankruptcy, and everyone was afraid because we are so interconnected. That was for me also a personal moment of realization that people are, instead of saying, what, you cannot pay your debt, go bankrupt, people were actually breaking their heads against the wall to find a solution about that. That was a realization. We're all in this together. Security, economy, even culturally, I like to believe. So it's a combination of internal and external shocks that is driving us. But we also need to facilitate this realization on every single level of governance, from the very local, from the neighborhood to the region, to the national, to the European. And that comparison will help us comparing ourselves with the rest of the world, I believe.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I can only second it and say something like, I think the future will be defined by our response system to everything that's happening. If we grow indifferent and everything will lead to an oblivion, then that's the worst probable outcome. So if someone says I don't care somewhere in Europe, it's very dangerous not to care. I think we should all care, and I think people will care. Eventually, they will see that, as you pointed out, Icelandic banks, and the mortgage crisis in 2007 and 8 led to a global disruption, right? So it's the response system. It's our response to problems, to issues. We have to make people feel relevant, and we have to make people feel that they care, or they make them care, like tell them that they should care. If they don't care, I think it's the beginning of a problem. Whenever people said we don't care, there was always some sort of atrocity happening. Always atrocity comes with a negligence. Atrocities don't thrive in places where attention is paid. If you don't pay attention, then that's a great environment for atrocity, for conflict, for exclusion, for lying, for all the vices, for evil, right? So as a filmmaker, I'm afraid of people not talking. I'm afraid of people not paying attention. I'm afraid of being deaf and mute. That's why I do everything to create vision and sound.
That's true. I mean, all your movies, the themes in your movies, they all tackle a social issue. So you are a man of your word. You put your money where your mouth
is. Yeah,
that's the correct way to put it. Yeah. But tell us about your future plans, about the movies that are in the pipeline or in the process of getting produced.
Yeah, well, I'm juggling a few projects at the same time, and I have 2 English language projects now that one is ready. We're waiting for distribution plans to be sorted out. With the new administration in USA, my Lionsgate, the company I'm working on the project with, and 5th season, 2 big companies are trying to schedule this year. They will see what will happen in a couple of days because we're still talking before the inauguration day. afterwards we will know more about the reality, and the whole reality probably will adjust. So all the platforms, streamers, the whole business industry, the whole cultural industry is holding their breath to see what will happen. I'm sure that to a certain degree they will just adjust to it. And so this is my American film Anniversary, and my Polish-British film Good Boy, because it's European, it's kind of more feasible, and it's easier to schedule it. So I think we will be just waiting for festivals. Well, I'm happy to have two films at the same time. It's not easy for distributors because you have to differentiate. In our business, once a director makes a film, you try to kind of just release it in a certain year. The whole year in the mind of the audience is like, I'm watching like Pedro Almodovar film in 1990 in 2023, and that's 2023 under this title, but 2024 is just for another title. It's harder when you have two titles. When you release them too close to each other, they can cannibalize themselves. So that's not the best way to market them. But I have two bullets to shoot. And I'm working on my Polish film that will hopefully be shot this summer, and I'm developing some other projects with international projects too, and we will see what the future brings, what AI brings. I'm hoping to make a project about AI or with the usage of AI. We will see. Like I will definitely, I treat it as whenever I meet the challenge, I treat it as an opportunity. At least I try, because it's invigorating and it keeps me up at night, which makes me excited. And this is the state I like to create films in.
Do you want to tell us more about Anniversary? Because I hear the story is fantastic.
Well, Anniversary is an interesting project because it grew in me for quite some time. I come from I have three siblings. My parents, my family has a strong identity, I would say. We're kind of like this Italian family that talks a lot, gossips a lot. We have a strong bond daily, and I was always in a lot of my movies. The family issue is an issue. Like I like to portray families as a sort of like their family dynamics are interesting. I think they are interesting because these are small societies in a nutshell, right? At the same time, being a member of the family kind of makes you inherit, or at least to a certain degree succumb to certain type of agenda you not necessarily agree with. So you have to redefine who you are in with regard to the bigger, to the group. So the group dynamics, in a way, group dynamic is fascinating. European Union, the family. So so Anniversary is a reflection of it. Everything gravitated towards sort of making a film like Anniversary, in which we have two parents and four siblings, four kids, of which comprising one brother and three sisters. It takes place in Washington, D.C. suburban area. And it just takes place for 80% of the film, even more of that, in one house and the garden. For the most time, we're in the house and we're just observing 5 different anniversaries, or I would say occasions, when the family is gathering every year. So you have the span of a couple of years. You have the family meeting every year, and that's the idea of showing a film in which of creating a film in which you have for 20 minutes or 25 minutes you sit on one you study, you dissect the dynamics of just one meeting and then cut, and then we see those same people gathering again the next time, and suddenly you don't know what happened in between. So suddenly somebody comes and is pregnant, there is a pregnancy, and someone is just, I don't know, there's somebody is holding grudges for whatever reason you're not aware of. So there's this dynamic of time too. And underneath it, I wanted to make it a bit more dystopian and to create a sense of political and social change in America. So you have 5 years, the family meets every year, but underneath the country underwent a huge tectonic shift in moving from a democratic system as we have it now to something less democratic, but desired by people. It's not like a fascist movement, whatever. Just sometimes people don't like democracy too much. To make it more thought-provoking, I was always fascinated by this old Plato anti-democratic argument in which one of the arguments against democracy was that your vote weighs the same weight as someone much less interested, educated than you, but in the face of democracy, you mean the same, which is unfair. So democracy has a sense of unfairness in it, that Plato found as a disadvantage, and we used it and made it embedded into the new system of our film. So something is happening with the society. America is changing, and the flag. America has a new flag, and so this is a allegiance, and this family is changing too because of it. So I'm trying to mix the macro and the micro and see what happens with what's between us because of what's going outside.
Right.
This old saying of let's not talk about politics during Christmas or Thanksgiving. So this film is all about it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
So now, do you guys think that we can finish this podcast today with in the European way or in the American way? The question mark, or with a happy ending?
Dots.
Exactly. Let's pose a question like, what would you do for European Union?
Exactly. That's a happy ending. I mean, if we can inspire our listeners from whatever part of Europe they will come from to actually get interested in the future of Europe more.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's hope. Jan, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here, guys, and fingers crossed for the whole project.
Thank you.
And keep following the Epic social media channels and all the usual things that people say at the end of the podcast. But you'll know what to do. You'll digitally experience. So just follow us and keep engaged and share your opinions, because Epic is here to be a platform, not just a deliverer of messages. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks.